Tom Clark's 6M podcast is a Boink Studios production. And now, on with the show. Hey, what is up? Welcome to Tom Clark's 6M podcast. I'm your host, Tom Clark, and in this episode I'm joined by co-host Phil Lindsey. From the world of rock and roll comes one of the most popular hit albums of all time, featuring a former Beatle making his way in the music industry with his own band, further establishing himself as a solo artist, as well as one of the greatest songwriters of all time. We're talking about Band on the Run. Band on the Run is the third studio album from Paul McCartney and Wings. It was produced by McCartney and was released on the Apple label in the United States on December 5, 1973. McCartney wanted to record Band on the Run in an exotic location, and sessions for the album began on August 9, 1973 in EMI's studio in Lagos, Nigeria. Band members Henry McCulloch and Denny Sywell left Wings before the trip, leaving Paul, his wife Linda, and Denny Lane to do the bulk of the studio work. Paul played bass, drums, and lead guitar on the album. He also produced the album, with songwriting credit going to himself and Linda on all tracks except for two. The studio itself was run down, and Nigeria was in a state of civil unrest, making the entire experience a very challenging one for McCartney. Original demo tapes and song lyrics were actually stolen from Paul and Linda when the two were robbed at knife point outside the studio. Recording sessions ended in September of '73, and Wings returned to England, where their album was finished at AIR Studios, owned by longtime Beatles producer George Martin. The original release of Band on the Run featured 9 tracks, with a 10th track added by Capitol Records for the album's U.S. release. Band on the Run was well received by fans and critics alike. It was nominated for a Grammy for Best Album and was certified gold and went platinum 3 times in the United States. Thanks to the power of the songwriting, composition, and musicianship, Band on the Run is considered to be one of Paul McCartney's greatest albums of all time. The album's popularity, combined with the strength of the tracks themselves, makes Band on the Run a classic record that continues to stand the test of time. And that's the lowdown on Band on the Run. We do marvel quite a bit here on the 6M, and usually I always feel the need to tell everyone, Marvel's the third M in the 6M. Like, you can't read the logo. Like, none of you know how to read. You're all illiterate watching and listening. What's wrong with me? I do it all the time. I'm not going to do that this time. We're not talking about Marvel. We are talking about music. And guess what, kids? Music is the second M in the 6M. See, I changed up. I didn't tell you Marvel because it's not Marvel. This time it's music. We have covered the Fab Four here on the show before. We've done deep dives on the albums. And let's see, we've done Rubber Soul. We've done Revolver. We've done Sgt. Pepper. I still want to do Hard Day's Night. Depending on when you're listening to this, we may have already done Hard Day's Night. Because see, in case none of you guys know, gather around the mic there, kids, and I'll let you in. Gather around the headphones, whatever you're gathering around. I don't number these things, so we just put them out whatever order we want to. So if you ever hear us reference an episode we've already recorded, you're like, wait a minute, I haven't heard that one. Either you missed it or we just haven't released it yet. I just wanted this thing to be free-flowing. You guys listen as however you want to, at your own rate, your own pace, your own speed, okay? So, having said all that, this is Band on the Run by Paul McCartney and Wings. This is not the Paul McCartney we knew in the Beatles. This is an artist that's striking out on his own. By this point, the band has been officially over for 3 years. And, you know, we're not going to get into all the lawsuits and all the horrible, wretched stuff they all said about each other and the fact that they were all tied up in litigation for years. We would like to think that Paul and John made peace by the end. I mean, I think it depends on who you believe. We can touch on some of that here today. Hard to talk about Paul without talking about John, to be fair. And we've discussed their relationship. We've just barely, grazed the surface of it here on the 6M, but we have discussed it. It's hard to mention Lennon without immediately following the word Lennon by McCartney. It's just how this thing goes. But again, in 73, there's no Lennon attached to this project. This is Paul McCartney and Wings. Some would argue, Phil, this is the way Paul wanted it for a long time because Paul wanted to be the guy in charge. Paul probably has a different version of this, I'm sure. I don't want to take out frustrations on Paul McCartney because honestly, the Beatles thing, it's over. It's fine. Um, it's a microcosm of time that has lasted for generations and will probably outlive all of us listening right now, to be honest with you. And that's great because I love this music. I always have, always will. But Phil, this is not the same Paul we knew in the Beatles. And what prompted me to want to do this is that somehow we recorded a show one night and we started talking about music. I forget why we were. Well, it was the Get Back. That's what it was. You're asking me if I'd seen Get Back, and I'm praising this thing to you, telling you, go watch it, go watch it. And then we started talking about McCartney albums. So as right out the gate, give me the take you gave me that night on Band on the Run. Uh, where do you hold this album in terms of Paul's solo works?
I definitely think it's the best thing he did after he left the Beatles.
Hmm.
Like straight away, I think he's done other things that are either as good or better since, but that first album was kind of a miss for me. I wasn't a big fan of McCartney.
Oh, big time.
And Ram is Ram. There's great things about Ram. There's Piece of Cake where he is tearing into John Lennon on his record. Uh, I mean, it is a Paul McCartney diss track. Which why do we need a Paul McCartney diss track? I don't know, but it's there. But I feel like Band on the Run is probably his most concise work since he left the Beatles. I feel like there is no real miss on the album. I feel like every song is good. Um, the two albums before it, there's a lot of filler on it.
There is a lot of filler, especially on McCartney 1 because there's instrumental. Aren't there two instrumentals on that album?
Yeah, there's a lot of. You can tell
Think.
that he kind of rushed that album out on that first one. And maybe that's just hindsight looking at it when he dropped the album because it was like soon as they had broken up, he was ready with that album.
I was just going to say, didn't they release that while the band was still together? Or am I wrong?
I thought he released it. He announced he was going to release it when he was telling
That's
him
what it
that they were going
was.
to break up.
Yeah. That's, oh man, why did it ever have to get that far? Like we don't have to get into it, dude, but why did it ever have to get that far? I mean, just the amount of the amount of rage and hate and bitter feelings and terrible stuff being said between the four of them, especially between John and Paul. I mean, imagine being a fan during their prime and being, a kid or a young man during that time and just watching the favorite band of all time is falling apart in front of you.
Yeah, it was. If you guys have watched the Five Heartbeats, which is a classic Robert Townsend movie, one of
Yes.
my favorite references from it is the the Flash telling them that he's leaving the group, and then all of a sudden going, "By the way, my album's going to be out soon. Flash is lonely at the top." That's what this felt like. It felt like him going, like, "Yeah, really sorry to tell you guys I'm leaving the band, but." Have a solo album coming out, by the way. Paul McCartney is lonely at the top. Um,
Oh, that's great.
but yeah, I don't know, man. I actually like Piece of Cake every time I hear it. I enjoy it, but there is some stuff in there that's like, oof, it's not as bad as How Can You Sleep, by the way. Watching the videos for the making of How Can You Sleep and him, calling Paul McCartney while recording it and
Yes.
and George standing in the background looking very uncomfortable.
Yeah, that's rough. Yeah, I've seen that. That is hard to watch, man. Yeah. I mean, it's a snapshot of how vile things got between them. And again, as a fan, dude, it's a shame. Yeah, again, the fact that I don't think I was going to say that I had to get that far. It didn't have to get that far, but that's how far it got. I mean, dude, Phil, there's a lot of truth to the idea of the more you love somebody, the more it's going to hurt when it ends, and the more personal it's going to get, and the more you're going to take swipes at each other. These two guys loved each other for a long time. They were closer than brothers, for God's sake. They went through everything together, and of course, when it ends, that level of personal animosity is going to be much greater than it would be if they were just two casual business partners,
Yeah. Um, I don't know. I think that they had done so much together. I think that I almost feel like there was no amicable way for it to end. Especially where they were as people, where they were as artists. Um, I don't know. John and Paul were just in totally different places. Paul was, happily married again. Um, uh, and on the flip side of that, John's first marriage was ending. He's now trying to have this new relationship with Yoko, and he also had a pretty bad drug issue. So, yeah, they were just in two totally different places.
Yeah, for sure. And the diss tracks, man, dude, the rap and hip hop genre gets too much flack for diss tracks back in the day because, man, if you want to hear diss tracks, go back to Paul and John. That's crazy. Like, those little tidbits as you're growing up, as I was growing up listening to the Beatles on the radio, and it was, by the time I'm a kid, they're broken up. It's over. They've gone solo and whatnot. But like, you know, you don't become aware of that stuff till you grow up, and you're like, wait a minute, he dissed him. What? I got to hear this. And you start listening to the stuff. You're like, oh my god. Not the first time it's happened, won't be the last. And it's not, not to give rap and hip hop a black eye, but my point is, for anyone trying to give rap and hip hop a black eye, shame on them, because this stuff started in rock and roll, didn't it? I mean, wasn't rock where that, one band takes a shot at another? I mean, I'm sure country's done it too to some extent, but like, I don't know, man. The rocker guys, man, they're just as guilty of doing that stuff.
Oh yeah, sure. Several rockers have done diss tracks. I mean, Freddie Mercury recorded an entire diss track to his ex-manager, and it was horrible. The Death on Two Legs. That's the name of it.
Yeah, it's crazy. All right. So look, I don't know where you were with this, Phil, but for years growing up, when I saw the cover of Band on the Run, I thought that this was Paul McCartney and Wings on the cover. I thought this was the actual band. And turns out it's not. Well, I didn't know. I thought, well, this is the band. I didn't know who the Beatles are, but I don't know who these guys are. Turns out this is not Wings. This is Paul and, of course, his wife, Linda. This is, let's see, Michael Parkinson, Kelly Lynch, James Coburn, I know that name, Clement Freud, Christopher Lee, know that name, and John Conte, I think. Yeah. John Conte, a British professional boxer. So yeah, I guess the idea was they were going to put a who's who on this thing. And there's one other name on here, last name Lane, Laine. So let's see, Linda and Lane plus 6 other well-known. Yeah, I mean, again, dude, I don't know what your first memories are of seeing this album, hearing this album. I just assumed this was Wings on the cover. It took a long time before I knew otherwise.
Yeah, I don't think I ever noticed that it wasn't the band on the cover. I noticed that it was a riff off or a reference to a movie, but I did not notice that it wasn't the band.
Mm-hmm. The idea was that they were dressed as convicts caught in the spotlight of a prison searchlight.
Yep.
So apparently it took 24 attempts to get this final shot. So there you go. But do you know what, dude? The cover's iconic now. When you think Bound on the Run, you think this album cover, not just the song, but I think this album cover, dude. So it worked. And, leave it up to an ex-Beatle to go for a perfect record cover. I mean, that would make perfect sense to me, obviously. This is Apple Records, of course. As we know, Apple Records was the Beatles' record label. So, yeah, it's Apple Core, and everything kind of sprang from that. Again, released in 1973. Before we dive into these tracks, dude, I got to know. I was having a discussion about this with somebody earlier today because we're talking about the Paul and John and Yoko and whatnot. You're either one of two people, okay? You're probably not in between. Are you a pro Linda McCartney on this album? Or are you an anti Linda McCartney on this album? Because, brother, she was not a singer. She was not much of a keyboardist. I think she learned how to do everything on the fly. And he wanted her on tour and wanted her to be a part of the band. So she ended up being part of the band. So I don't think we're in Yoko Ono territory here, dude. Maybe you are. I don't know if I am, but what's your thoughts on Linda being a part of this deal? What do you think?
I don't have a problem with it. I think because Linda was such a big part of his act after he left the Beatles, that I just got used to it by the time Band on
Hmm,
the Run. Well, by the time I discovered Band on the Run, it's not like I was alive to watch this thing happen in real time. Um,
sure.
but yeah, when I think about him leaving the Beatles, I think about like the video for Coming Up, and he's got Linda in the video with him, and they're doing the dance in unison. um,
Right.
so no, I think that at that point, I just understood that wherever Paul was going, Linda was going.
And we lost her too soon. Obviously, I mean, Paul's outlived her by a good number of years now. I think he's on his third marriage now. Is that right? I think I could be wrong.
I'm not
Second or
sure. I
third?
think it's his third. Might
Yeah.
it might be his fourth.
Oh wow, is it? Jeez.
I don't quote me on
No,
that.
no, I get you. Nothing wrong with that, kids. By the way, sometimes true love takes a while. But no, I mean, after Linda, I don't know how because I mean, she was the love of his life. I mean, he would probably admit to that as well. But they just seem to gel, and it's just one of those things where John, for all the grief that he got for Yoko, and for all the grief that maybe he deserved to get to some degree, honestly. Like Ringo's take was always the best take. Ringo's take was always he loves her. He wants her around. Okay, well, who cares? And so if you ask the band at the time, because even at the time, dude, in the Get Back footage, you can hear Paul, and they're kind of joking about, oh, one day they're going to say that Yoko broke the band up, and they're all making jokes about it as it happened, and like they just didn't look at it as being a big deal. They didn't think it was serious. They didn't look at her as being a threat. She was around all the time, but they didn't look at her that way. I mean, if you're going to paint someone as the villain for breaking this band up, you could just paint the animosity between Paul and John that got real personal. I mean, without going too far into Yoko territory here, do you put any credence to the idea that Yoko was the catalyst for splitting these guys up?
No, I think that there were issues there already. Do I think that she exasperated issues that were there already? Maybe, um, but I think even if she wasn't there, they were going to break up.
I mean, I think they were headed that way too. It's real easy to talk about Yoko, and I do think she had a definite impact on the situation. I think maybe she sped the process up, in my opinion. I don't think that she prolonged it. I think that she gave John the courage to strike out on his own, which you could argue that's good. I don't know. You could also argue that Paul and John's best work came together, not separately. That may be subjective unless you're basing it on album charts and record sales. I guess if you want to do that, you can.
Yeah, I
But
I would say
yeah,
that Yoko was an example of how they were already growing apart.
mm, yeah, I'll go with that. Um, well, kids, there's been a couple of different issues of this album. There's a '93, what's called the Paul McCartney reissue that has 11 tunes on it. There's the '99 25th anniversary edition reissue that has like 21 tunes. We're not doing that one. There's a 2010 Paul McCartney archive collection. It's got tracks 1 through 9 per the original UK release. I think to this date, as of this recording, that's all the releases. Now, the original release from '73 has only 9 tracks, okay? But there was another track added in that supposedly was only for the US release. So if you didn't know that, we're throwing that in for you here today, just so you can stay with us if you'd like to follow along. This is back when they were still doing sides, of course. So we'll hit side 1. This album kicks off with what can only be described as the iconic song, Band on the Run. Dude, this is Paul McCartney showing off his expertise as a musician, as a songwriter, as a composer. This is 3 different songs in one. And this is the kind of stuff that Paul and John did together all the time. And you could sense when the music would change over and transition. Like, oh, this is Paul's song now. It was John's, now it's Paul's. But this is all Paul the whole time. But man, is this the most classic song that he wrote apart from the Beatles, you think?
I would say it's either this or maybe. Has to be either this or maybe. But I feel like this made like it has more of an impact in some ways. Both have big Simpsons references that, of course, maybe plays at the end of the one episode of Simpsons, and then there's the episode of Simpsons where they have the counselor they're working with, Gabriel, that's his name, and he's sitting in the back seat and he goes, "I've earned my wings." And he goes, "I know you're an angel." No, and then he puts on "Best of Wings" and starts singing "Bandit Around."
That's great. There's some stories behind this song, some stuff that maybe the kids out there don't know. But so supposedly the song, the theme of this is like freedom and escape, getting out on the road, getting away. Gee, I wonder who he's writing that about. Getting away from the rest of the guys in the Beatles, branching out on his own. And, there's something to be said for that. But I think maybe there's also a story for the other three guys to tell about that too. But again, we're just going to give one guy's side here today. It is a 3-part medley, as we said, with the first section, sort of a slow song. Then it speeds up in a rock style. Then suddenly the third is in slide guitar or steel guitar, I guess. And it's suddenly a country song, which feels more like Ringo's jam. The last half of that song feels more like Ringo's song. Dude, I love this song. This is a song. And dude, the second it starts, that riff, it just sounds like a Lounge Lizard kind of thing, like a real laid back, serene kind of on the ocean, on the beach or something, again, just peaceful, I guess. Just has that vibe about it. Man, when Paul's at his best, I submit nobody can touch him. I mean, I think this is as good as Paul ever got without John. What do you think of the idea of combining 3 medleys into one? Why does it work so well for this song?
I don't know. I think the story that it attempts to tell sonically, it just works. I can't tell you what the story is, but you can tell that there is a clear, narrative from the beginning of the song to kind of the middle version of the song, and then kind of the most iconic part with the refrain of "Band on the Run." If I had to interpret a way, he has like the mellow part at the beginning where it's like, stuck here, I don't know how to get out, and then he's got the middle part of, if I ever get out of here, this is the plan. And then the ending is him, of course, on the run. He's finally free.
Yeah. Tidbit here. I don't know if I ever knew this, but the original demo recording of this song was stolen. Or of the album. The album itself was stolen, I believe. They were recording in Lagos, Nigeria, and they were robbed at knife point. So says the net. And the demo tapes were stolen. And I suppose that the thieves didn't know what they had. So they just took off. And I get Paul's take of it was they're probably going to go take these and record over them or sell them. So, dude, somewhere out there, perhaps in Lagos, Nigeria, there exists the actual physical demos from the very first of this album. That's crazy to me, man. I like little anecdotes like that. It's wild. Getting into some of the lyrics of this, there's been, and I can't say that Paul has confirmed this, but to me, I always read this as a reference to Eleanor Rigby. Well, the Undertaker drew a heavy sigh, seeing no one else had come. To me, that's an Eleanor Rigby reference. I don't know where else that could be. Maybe that's just coincidental, but I don't think so. And the bell was ringing in the village square for the rabbits on the run. That to me sounds like he's referencing Eleanor Rigby. They were always very wise and very clever with their word placement and their turn of a phrase. A lot of that was due to Ringo. Ringo came up with Hard Day's Night. I mean, just these phrases he would use, the way he would mix things, put things together. But that band became notorious for that. I mean, what about the idea that they would put things in their music, not hide them, but sort of as a wink and a nod to previous albums and to previous songs? I love that idea about Paul, especially.
Yeah, I think it's great. I think it's one of those things that gives Beatles fans things to go back and dissect. And it makes their fans feel like they're part of the experience of making the album.
Yeah, dude, this is a classic freaking song. I can't imagine I can't imagine this song not existing, which sounds like a weird thing to say, but good Lord. I can't imagine it because, man, it's just so good. It's classic. Um, Depending on whose side you take, you know, I was listening to this album in my 20s and I was told, this is dad music. What are you listening to this for? You know what I mean? And I'm like, because it's older than you consider this dad music. What? Like that kind of stuff never made any sense to me. Like I was listening to Miles Davis in my 20s and I'm like, does that mean I'm old before my time? What does that mean? Can I just like something? You know, I don't get that. But um, what? All right, so let me hit you with this. How does this album age? Does it hold up? You think that is it trapped in a certain time period, or does it sound as good today as it did then? What do you think?
Um, I think some songs on it are just timeless. Like "Band on the Run" is timeless. I don't care
Yeah.
what era you play it in. It's just a great song. There's other songs on this album like "Jet" that again I just don't care when you play it. It's just a great song.
Yeah, for sure. And you gave me the segue. Let's talk about Jet. Jet may be. It's another like Paul McCartney doesn't have well-known songs, right? But like Paul McCartney's a solo artist. This sucker, holy God! If you don't know this song, or something wrong with you. You don't listen to music, evidently. Um, the song's title, ironically enough, inspired by their dog, their lab named Jet. No deep meaning behind this one, kids. It's just the family pet. Um, I love this song, dude. I don't. Again, leave it to Paul to take something extremely simple and write a freaking hit song with it. Um, this is it's crazy. And again, if you don't know this, and this is from Paul himself. Quote: "We've got a Labrador puppy who is a runt, the runt of a litter. We bought her along a roadside in a little pet shop out in the country one day. She was a bit of a wild dog, a wild girl who wouldn't stay in. We have a big wall around our house in London, and she wouldn't stay in. She always used to jump the wall. She'd go out of town for the evening, like Lady and the Tramp. She must have met up with some big black lab or something. She came back one day pregnant. She proceeded to walk in the garage and have this litter, 7 little black puppies, perfect little black Labradors, and she's not black, she's tan. So we worked out it must have been a black lab. Um, what we do is if either of the dogs we have has a litter, we try to keep them for the puppy stage so we get the best bit of them. And then when they get a bit unmanageable, we ask people if they want to, I guess, take them in as pets. Man, did you know the story of this whole freaking song being about the family dog? That's crazy.
I didn't, but Paul is hilarious to me because I think Paul will take things um like that story about the dog and use that as a cover for other things that he puts in a song that is something he might have had on his mind while he was writing a song, but he'll very slyly put these things in a song and act like nobody notices it. I think he told the story later where he was saying that um, he was anxious about meeting Linda's dad, and when you listen to the theme of the song, that's kind of what the song is about. And he just kind of goes like,
It
"No, it's
is.
about the dog." Like, no, it's not, Paul. Come on, come on. No, it's just this innocent song that we wrote about the dog, and he tries to like, do what Paul does and act like everything is innocent. And it's like, no, I never read it that way. Um, but no, this is probably my favorite song of the album. I just
Yeah, it's
it's
good.
something about it. I just think the chant for the chorus of it. Um, I think one of the best things about this album is the instrumentation on every song, and
Mm.
this song is no different. There's just such great moments in the song. Like I don't know how he gets that tone on the guitar solo later in the song, but it's just so good. Um, yeah, it's just a great
Yeah.
song.
And the horns on this remind me of the horns on All You Need Is Love as well.
Yeah, the
Uh,
sax towards the end. It's just so many good different
oh,
um moments instrumentally on this song, man. It's just such a great song, man. So well produced.
it really is. I love that you talked about that sax just plays it out. Like the beginning of Bound the Run is so iconic. The end of Jet is iconic as well. How it just dun dun dun. Like just let you down real easy, like a leaf falling down to the ground, right? That's so Paul, man. Like to come in easy, to go out easy on another track. Man, oh God, this guy's a freaking genius, man. He really is. Um, to your point, I can almost remember the funny face as that time you told him that you were going to be marrying soon. Sounds to me like he's talking about her dad for sure. Her dad, of course. I mean, Linda's last name was Eastman of the Kodak Empire. She was a photographer after all, kids. So yeah, I totally get where he's coming from. Uh, there's a lot of nonsense in this. He says, "Mater, Mater, I want a jet to always love me." Uh, Lady suffragette, which he just threw in, apparently didn't mean anything. It was just a nonsense word. That's another Beatleism right there, is to throw a nonsense word in. But yeah, it's iconic. I mean, you follow up Band on the Run with Jet. Holy God, dude, is that like following up? You run your main event the first of the show, and then the second match is another main event. And the rest of the card, you're just kind of hoping how they're going to top it, because this is crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, starting your album with Band on the Run is a huge flex musically.
Yeah.
Like it's just such a big record. It's such a big record production wise. And then coming back with Jet right afterwards, like those are two songs that are singles out the gate.
Oh yeah, Jet was released as the debut single in January of '74. Yeah, so there you go. I mean, it was a top 10 hit for Paul McCartney and Wings. It peaked at number 7 on both the British and American charts. Tom Clark 6M Podcast is sponsored in part by Radius Law Group. Every day, Radius helps individuals, families, small businesses, and nonprofit organizations throughout North Carolina, Florida, and Pennsylvania resolve their legal issues by providing effective legal counsel in the areas of estate planning, as well as elder law and Medicaid. Radius Law holds the radical belief that working with a lawyer can indeed be enjoyable. So give them a call at 1-800-519-5667 for more information and tell them that Tom Clark 6M Podcast sent you. And the band that came after the fact, and the two, or was it early mid 2000s or late? I forget what year it was. The Australian rock band Jet. That's where they took their name from. No surprise. Jet's a good band, by the way, folks. If you don't know Jet, go look up their stuff. That's a fun band. But yeah, it's good, man. I really love this song. We don't have to get into a discussion of Paul's most iconic songs post Beatles, but I would have to say this would have to be up there for sure. Let's see, song number 3, Bluebird. Now, I don't know what your take on Bluebird is, but I'm going to tell you this. I don't dislike this song, but Bluebird is sure not Blackbird, okay? And again, don't hate the song. If I told you I'm the biggest fan of it, I'm not being honest. So what's your take on Bluebird, track number 3?
I really enjoy Bluebird. It's something, again, it's the production of this record that really makes it so good. I believe it's called a guero. The washboard thing that it's called a idiophone, a scraped idiophone. So they use a guero in this thing several times. They've used gueros in Beatles records, but like the guero that's playing during the verses, and like just how well the production is on this is just such a good song in my opinion. Like I don't think it's my favorite song on the album, but every time I listen to it, it's like, man, this is just really well produced.
It's a very happy song, and it is very well produced. I won't argue that point. It's not one of my favorites of his, and it's certainly not my favorite on this album. It's all right. So this song has been translated a few different ways. It's got to do with love, of course. This is Paul's record, kids. In case you didn't know, this is kind of
Paul
what
likes
Paul
his
wrote
schmaltz,
about all
man.
the time.
He likes his schmaltzy records.
Yes. Too heavy-handed with Paul sometimes, you think. I mean, wasn't some of that was his undoing on later albums, wasn't it? Like too sappy at times.
I mean, I feel like that has been a critique of him his entire career, that he's always made very smokey records. When we talked about the beef between him and John earlier, that was one of John's knocks at him, is that he made very sugary, lovey-dovey records.
Yeah, John was the rocker. Paul was the love song guy. That's how this thing played out. And dude, I still submit that's why the Beatles were as over as they were, and why they're still over today. You had that dynamic of two guys coming out from two very different areas, but who both were excellent musicians and excellent songwriters.
I agree.
So it worked perfectly. Yeah. Some lyrics on this, let's see, late at night when the wind is still, I'll come flying through your door and you'll know what love is for. Yeah, this is, holy God, this is deep. Touch your lips with a magic kiss and you'll be a bluebird too, and you'll know what love can do. Yeah, dude. I love Paul. I do. This is the sappiest. This is maple syrup out the bottle, man. This whole song. And that's okay. I'm not hating on it. But for me personally, it's, give me Jet, give me Live and Let Die, give me, other Paul songs. But I just, this is not my favorite on the song or on the album, excuse me. Yeah, it's like all alone on a desert island. We're living in the trees and we're flying. Dude, not for nothing. If I'll say, and I don't want to be negative on here, right? I'll say this positive for sure. This guy was so in love with Linda, like crazy in love. No one's going to write songs like this if they're single, if they're not in love with somebody. I mean, how much of Paul's stuff do you think came from Paul himself or came from the relationships he was in at the time? Because he even wrote about breakups during the Beatles and hard times that still became hits. I mean, didn't he just pull most of his stuff from his everyday life, right?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's a fair guess. Yeah, and I mean, I don't have a problem with that. I think that this song is very sappy. Yes, but I do enjoy the instrumentation on it. I do enjoy the hook on it. But yeah, I feel like if you're signing up for a Paul McCartney record, you're signing up for schmaltz. That's his thing.
I can't argue that. I can't argue that. The next track on this album is one of those you either love it or you really don't like it at all. Mrs. Vanderbilt. Now, Phil, I'll give you my take here. I don't hate this song at all because I'm not a fan of Bluebird. So when this song starts out, it's for me personally, it's like, oh, I really like this. And it's not, the chorus isn't great, if I'm being honest. But like, again, I don't hate it at all. It feels, to me, again, to my ears, I'm like, good, I'm glad Bluebirds ended. And so maybe that's why this song hits me a certain way. But what's your take on Mrs. Vanderbilt?
I think he does something, and it could be just the theme of a band on a run, or a gang of criminals on a run. But he does something with like chant for most of this album for the hooks. Like if you notice, a lot of hooks are chants. Like Jet is basically a chant.
Sure.
And he does the same thing here with the ho, hey ho. And
yeah.
it's like that part. I don't know. It's something about the what's the use of wandering part that always is catchy to me. Like I don't care. I mean, every time I listen to it, I end up stopping and listening to this song because it's just something catchy about it.
And I'm gonna tell you what. Once you hear it, you won't get it out of your head for 3 days. It'll be in your head. You know I'm right too, right? Once it gets in your head, forget about it.
You end up, somewhere later in the day singing, "What's the use of wandering?"
Yes. And what's crazy is, if you're not familiar with the song, the first time you hear it, you might go, "Oh, this is not a great song." But I guarantee you, on the next listen, you're going to be hearing it in your head forever, and you're like, "Oh, it's not a bad song at all." Now I kind of like it. So it grows on you. It's just, but that's the magic of Paul McCartney, dude. He can take something that you never thought it'd be a hit, but man, it's working. It's totally working.
He knows how to write a hit. He knows how to write a catchy record, and I feel like this song is a great example of it.
Yeah, for sure. There was a song that he wrote for. I love this story. There was a song he wrote for a group called Badfinger, and Badfinger was a Welsh group, and they took their name from a John Lennon song, which was "Bad Mother Finger," I think. And so that's where they took their name from, right? But they were an Apple Records group. They were also, I think George Martin produced their album. I don't know how many of their records he produced, but um, "Come and Get It," Paul wrote for them. That's a Paul McCartney track, and it was their first hit. He gives it to the band, and the band is like, "Well, we're going to take it. We're going to rework it. We're going to put our spin on it." And Paul's like, "No, this is a number one. You record it the way I wrote it because this is a number one." And guess what? It went number one because they recorded exactly the way he handed it to them. And I'm like, dude, that's beyond confidence. That is knowledge. This isn't ego. This is knowledge. I know what will sell. This will sell. I'm Paul effing McCartney. Record it the way I said to. I mean, dude, that's bold on a level that I love so much. I love that, dude. I just, in his prime and in John's prime, especially together, dude, I don't think there was any other duo that's, in my opinion, I don't know if there's been a duo that's touched them since then. Like, knowing what the public wanted, knowing what would sell, knowing what was good and what wasn't. Dude, come on.
Yeah. Doesn't the story go that even though they weren't on good terms at the time when Ram came out, that John heard Coming Up somewhere and he was like, ah, damn it, like that's why he's Paul, because I I want to write a record like that. I want to write a record that is catchy and I know it's a hit like this. And you can
Yes.
tell it's a hit the second it comes on.
Yes. And John hated Paul for that, but he loved him for it at the same time. He respected him. But you're right. John would, there was a fascinating book called Nowhere Man that is based on John's diaries. And 99% of the book is from John's own hand. Because, when you're an ex-Beatle and you have more money than God, you don't really have anything to do all day. And his last years on this planet were not great because he was bored. He had done everything. And it's a fascinating read. If you've never read it, I encourage you. It's really fascinating read. But he wrote a lot in his diaries about being ticked off at Paul and hating the guy. But then he would hear a song on the radio and go, I can't deny it. This guy's freaking great. What a great song that is. And he would get so upset that Paul wrote a hit. He hated him for that. He's like, I love this song, but God, I hate that guy. So that's crazy, man. It's crazy. But yeah, the ho, hey, ho stuff, man, like I said, once you get this in your head, it's never getting out. So yeah, it's, again, not my favorite track either, to be honest with you. But after Bluebird, which I'm not a big fan of, this works for me. You could argue that the next track, Let Me Roll It, you could make the case that this is one of Paul's better songs, post Beatles. And dude, he's in the groove in this song. He's laid back. It's like that old adage of, where does the bass player play? Well, he plays where he needs to, only where he needs to. He doesn't have to show off. He's the thing keeping the band together. That's Paul in this song. He's playing what he needs to play when he needs to play it. He knows who he is, knows what he's good at. Dude, this is a good song. What do you think about Let Me Roll It?
The excellent song. It's about as close to Paul McCartney doing an R&B record as I could come up with, because it's very bluesy, but it's also very much like it's Paul McCartney's brand of schmaltz, like we were saying earlier, but it's not as sugary. It's like under this, like, I don't know, like this, grittier blues riff. It's great.
Yeah, I love it, dude. I love because man, they were fans of R&B music. John and Paul loved Motown music. Huge fans. They loved Ray Charles. They loved Chubby Checker. Loved Fats. Of course, they loved Little Richard. Chuck Berry, of course. I mean, they loved R&B stuff. What a different world it would be had they cut an R&B record. I mean, you could argue that they did in their own way. They just took their own inspirations and made it their style. But that's a good take, man. I'm all about that. Yeah, I do. I love this song, man. I don't know. Where do you personally rank this song in terms of his post Beatles work, or maybe all time work? I mean, how high does it rank for you? You think is it top 20 or is it lower than that? What do you think?
I think it's top 20, possibly top 10, because I think. But that just goes with my take at the beginning of this when I said that this album I feel like is his best work after he left the Beatles, because there's just so many great songs on this album. Like, I mean, there's several songs on here that, if you put it on someone else's album, it's the biggest single on that album.
Oh, excellent point, dude. Excellent point. Um, yeah, I agree with that. I mean, it's again, this is Paul at his best, and he can do no wrong here. Have a product or a service that you want to get out into the world? Always wanted to try your hand at podcasting but don't know where to start? We've got you covered. Pod for Hire is a podcast production company that offers turnkey services to fit your needs. We produce your show from start to finish, allowing you the valuable time you require to focus on your established clients as well as prospective clients. We pride ourselves on delivering a top-notch product that will set your business apart from the rest and give your company the exposure it deserves. For more information, give us a call at 1-828-800-9880 or email us at info@podforhire.com. Pod for Hire. We take the work out of podcasting. Yeah, I don't know. It's again, it's such a good tune, dude. You gave me something I understand. You gave me loving in the palm of my hand. I can't tell you how I feel. My heart is like a wheel. It's hard to read it without singing it. Dude, how much of this do you think people kind of had a little laugh with when the name of the song is "Let Me Roll It," knowing that the Beatles were entertained by the drug culture and specifically weed? How much of this do you think people had fun with at the time? Like, "Let me roll. I know what he's singing about."
Yeah.
What do you think, man?
I don't know, man. It's I'm sure most people are gonna take it that way because of course they're gonna take the the roll it and just assume. I never read the song that way. You just never know. There are Beatles records. There are John and Paul records that I thought was about something else, and it's about drugs. So you never know.
Yeah, good call. And we, in the beginning of this episode, we talked about who was on the cover of the album. One of those that we didn't mention, last name Lane, was Denny Lane, of course. How do you forget Denny Lane, dude? Are you kidding me? On guitar, I mean, dude, you mentioned Paul's solo career, and Denny Lane's name is going to come up. I mean, we got to give credit where credit's due here, folks.
Yeah. Is it true that the I guess like the title of the song is inspired by George Harrison's record, that whatever, I Have You Anytime?
Your favorite Beatle? Yes, sir. Yeah, for sure. So that's good. That's cool. I mean, I think it seemed like George and Paul's relationship was okay, I think, for the most part. I think Ringo still got along with everybody, but it was Paul and George that had beef, and then maybe it was George and John I'm thinking of that were okay, and George and Paul had beef. It was, God, it's so messed up.
I think it was that George and John were okay because, again, George was staying in the background helping him put together a song that would be How Can You Sleep at Night?
Yeah. Yeah, good call.
So I think it was, I don't know. I don't think by the end that George had a beef with anybody.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do think that it's interesting that at that point they had all done solo stuff. So I do think it's interesting that they kind of were taking things from what the other was doing from afar. And whether that just be, riffing off the title of that song from George's album or taking sounds from John Lennon, I'm not sure.
Yeah, because some other stuff that was said was that Paul was singing like John for this song. And he came out later and said he didn't realize he was doing that. And honestly, I give him a pass. These guys spent a lot of years together. Maybe he didn't realize he was doing that anyway. I mean, I can buy that, to be honest with you. I don't see that as a cop out at all, dude.
I mean, the later we get into this album, there's this song and there's at least two other songs that sound like Beatles records. Maybe not intentionally. That's just because that's his creative process and he's used to that sound. But I could see this being a Beatles record.
I can too, honestly. And I think we mentioned this off mic the other night. We started talking about this stuff. I still think Uncle Albert, Admiral Halsey is definitely a Beatles song. In my head, that's a Beatles song. It's just missing the other three guys on it. Mamunya is the next song. Now, again, there, Phil, you're either going to dig this or you're going to not dig it. I don't know if anybody's like, this song's all right. Nah, you're going to dig it or you're not going to dig it. What's your take on Mamunya? What do you make of this song?
I don't dislike it. I think it's fine for what it is. I can't say that like I'm in love with this record either, but I don't hate it. It's kind of like, no, it's fine. It's an easygoing record. In the midst of a bunch of other records that I really like.
Right.
Like when it's on, like when it jumps from Let Me Roll It to this, I don't ever feel like I gotta skip this. Like I'm cool with just letting it play out to get to the next record.
Sure. I'm okay with that too, honestly. I don't think I skip it either, really. This song was written in Marrakesh, and no, not during that trip to Marrakesh for the White Album. This was written in early 73. So the McCartneys evidently visited Marrakesh way after the fact. There's a hotel, Mamunia, I think is how it's pronounced, that they were staying at, which means safe haven in Arabic. So he kind of just flipped the word up a little bit, and included it on Bound the Run. So supposedly he was using it, as a metaphor for the difficult times people face. I mean, you could put whatever meaning you want to put behind it, but it's still a quirky Paul McCartney track. And again, they recorded, I think they recorded the bulk of this album in Lagos, which is, again, how would you ever predict something like that? But that's where it was done. There's actually been, and this is interesting, we talked about Paul doing an R&B song, that this has been described by more than one person as Afro Soul. The song and the refrain are in the key of A major and the verses are in the key of C major. It gets its props, I guess. I'm not a huge fan of it. They're comparing it to John again, and supposedly, I mean, one of these critics had something to say about it. Supposedly, a rework of Rain, which John wrote, that the Beatles performed. Phil, is that a reach? Aren't we reaching now at this point? Come on.
It doesn't really sound like Rain to me, but I can see that it has that same kind of like I don't want to say psychedelic rock sound that Rain and those records had, but it has that same kind of peaceful sound to it.
Yeah.
I don't know if I would say that, but I do feel like you can see his influences from that time in his life on this record.
I totally agree. But there's a fine line between influences and experiences, and then flat out taking a song that you did before, that your buddy did before. Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, Rain is a lot more up tempo than this song.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if I kind of see that. Like tonally, it doesn't even really sound like the same song either.
No. And dude, while we're talking about it, Rain is a very underrated Beatles track. I'm just throwing it out there. I love that song.
It's one of those records where Ringo really brought it on drums. Like you can always remember the memorable performances from Ringo. And I don't want to say it like that, like Ringo didn't have that many great performances.
No, I got
so when he showed out, he was great. But I do feel like when he had a good showing on a record, like you remembered it.
You know what's funny is that I'm going to defend Ringo from any person out there that wants to attack him. It seems like fans always have something wise or coy to say about Ringo. But what kills me is musicians in that world, professionals, love Ringo and say he's such a good drummer. But yet, people who don't play and who just buy the records and are fans, does this sound a lot like another genre you and I enjoy watching on TV, Phil? Because it sounds a lot like it's me. Like we're where fans are lambasting a guy, but the people around that guy is like, no, he's very good. Like,
Oh yeah, I mean, as wrestling fans, I definitely think some people think that Ringo is the Genetti of the group. Um, but no, people like him, and I understand why people like him. He's a fun guy to be around.
yes,
It seems like by all accounts, nobody doesn't get along with the guy.
right.
Um, and I think it's just something to be said about you as a drummer and what some people consider one of the greatest bands ever.
Yep.
So some people are always going to revere you.
Hey, all I can tell you is Ringo hit number one before Paul and John did. That's all I'm saying. So I mean, there's something to that. Um,
No, those two were still in their feelings when they left. I've said this before. I think George was the first to make a really good album when he left. Like
I'll
his
agree with that.
first solo album was better than John or Paul's first solo albums.
I'm going to agree with that too. 100%. There is a lot of talk of rain in this song. So if people want to get, anal about it, I guess they could say, oh, well, this is freaking rip off of rain. I get it. Whatever. If that's what you want to go with God, brother, I guess. I don't know. No Words is the next track. I like No Words, dude. I'm a fan of this song. This is one of those tunes that brings me back. Brings me back to the record, makes me focus again. So I'm good. What's your take on No Words?
Yeah, I really like this record a lot. And I mean, I've spoken in great praise like the instrumentation on this album a lot, but this is another song where the instrumentation is really good. Um, I think the song structure on this album is also very good. Which I mean, this is Paul McCartney. He's been doing this for a long time at this point. Like he knows how to put together a song. Um, But I think there's also something to just the composition of this album, like the ebbs and flows of this album, and the story that it tries to tell. Um, I think it's really good. I think starting out on such a high note with "Band on the Run," and then getting a jet, and then getting to like the lovey-dovey song with Bluebird, like you could tell like there's a clear pace from song to song.
Yeah. Oh, dude, a natural, sort of like a Pepper vibe where each song is connected, whether it meant to be or not. Each one's connected and it's going like the album's taking you on a journey somewhere.
Yes.
Yeah, I'll take that. I'll take that. The song's verses are in the key of A major. The key moves to the dominant E major for the refrain. I mean, when you start talking musician speak, you're going to lose a lot of people, and I get that. But like, man, this guy was, to your point earlier about composition, he was so on his game on this album. My God, amazing how good he is. Supposedly, a lot of what's going on here is a desire for women who he fears may not be only interested in him. The refrain consists of the single line, "No words for my love." Um, so yeah, I mean, again, people are going to read into the stuff what they want to read into it, but it is what it is. And I like the fact that all these songs are open to interpretation unless there's a very definite, explicit meaning behind it. And even then, you can take songs to mean whatever you want them to mean for whenever you want to mean them for. Um, you say that love is everything and what we need the most of. I wish you knew that's just how. I wish you knew that's just how true my love was. I mean, he says love like 12 times in a row here, but it's working because it's him and he can make it work. And it's not a very long song either. I mean, he gets in, he gets out, he gets the job done. This may be the shortest song on the record, perhaps at 2 minutes 35 seconds. It is the shortest track on the album. So there you go. Yeah, I'm a fan of this. Um, the next song up on the agenda here, kids, is the one that I don't know if we mentioned this beginning or not, but there is a track only on the US release, Helen Wheels. I actually really like this song, dude. Um, I kind of hate that it's not on the actual first version of the album. What's your take on Helen Wheels?
Um, it's a good song. I feel like it fits the rest of the tone of this album. but at the same time, it doesn't feel like it's missed. If that's like,
Yeah.
I don't feel like the standard version is missing anything without it on it. But when it's there, like it is kind of a good, extra or bonus track for the album.
And this time it's not about the dog, it's about the car. Helen Wheels is their Land Rover. It's the name they gave to their Land Rover, which is a trusted vehicle that gets us around Scotland. Takes us up to the Shetland Islands and down to London. The song starts off in Glasgow, and it goes past Carlisle, goes to Kendal, Liverpool, Birmingham, and London. So no deep meaning here, folks. No drug taking, wackadoodle stuff with women, heartbreak and loss. This is just about driving in the Land Rover. So, but if you look at the lyrics of this thing, man, these are some, the way the song's composed, this is not just love me, do you know that I love you, said farewell to my last hotel. It never was uh, much kind of abode. Glasgow town never brought me down when I was heading out on the road. Carlisle City never looked so pretty, and the Kendal freeway is fast. Slow down, driver. I want to stay alive. I want to make this journey last. Dude, this is Paul knowing how to spin a phrase and how to turn some words. I mean, this kind of sounds like Beach Boys lyrics to me. Glasgow town never brought me down when I was heading out on the road. Carlisle City never looked so pretty, and the Kendal freeway is fast. I mean, dude, I dig this song, man. I really do. I like this song a lot. And it's worth mentioning, by the way, that we haven't mentioned this at all, that Linda gets songwriting credit on every song, I think almost every song on this album with Paul. So he included her in everything here, dude.
Yeah, I mean, she was clearly a big part of the creative process for this record. I mean, for this album in totality. So
yeah.
But I mean, that's like I said, she was such a big part of everything he did after the Beatles. It just made sense, and I think kind of the difference when you see how people rejected Yoko is that, for years the Beatles were a unit; they were their own thing, and then you get somebody else that's kind of trying to thrust their way in. So of course fans were like, "No, I don't want this person."
Yeah,
and once Paul went out on his own and he started bands that had always included Linda and she was always a part of what he did, it was just like, no, well, why would you reject her? Because she was always part of the package.
right. That's a good point. I can't argue that, dude. I can't argue that. And also another little footnote here: the promotional film clip, not called videos during those days, I suppose, kids, was directed by Michael Lindsay Hogg, who also directed Let It Be, and gets a lot of the blame for how that movie was accepted, because man, was it a movie to hang yourself by. Dark, cold, somber. Everything was Paul's fault and everybody hated each other. But if you go watch the Peter Jackson version of this movie, it's a far different film, folks. So I highly endorse it. With the 6M, highly endorse it. So go check it out. It's well worth your time. Picasso's last words, "Drink to Me." This is a bar drinking song if I ever done heard it. It's not a favorite tune of mine. I'm going to be straight with you. I could take or leave this song being on the album. That's just me. What's your take on Picasso's last words?
This song sounds like a Beatles record to me. It does. And not just that, I feel like this song kind of works as a overture of what you would see in like a symphony or a big opera, where it kind of sums up the rest of the record. You even have like the bits and pieces from every other song before it towards the end. Yeah, I like it for that reason because, like I said earlier, just the way that the album is paced, like a ongoing story, like a musical. This works as that overture. It works as like kind of that middle part of like a refrain of stuff that we heard earlier. Yeah, I mean, now if you just hear this song by itself outside the album, does it work as well? Maybe not, but I feel like as a part of this album, it's perfect.
There's some merits to this song. As I said, could I take or leave it on this album? Yes, I don't have to have it on this album, but that's me talking. However, the story behind it is awesome. So as the story goes, this was told in a British a program on British TV on an interview from Paul. He says he was on vacation in Montego Bay, Jamaica, where he snuck onto the set of Papillon, where he met Dustin Hoffman and Steve McQueen. First of all, if you met Steve McQueen, I don't care if your name's Paul McCartney. If you meet Steve McQueen, you're meeting a celebrity. I'm sorry. I love Paul, but Steve's my man. Dude, I'm just saying. After dinner with Hoffman, McCartney's fooling around the guitar. Evidently, someone made the comment that Paul couldn't just write a song about anything. So Dustin Hoffman pulls out a magazine, and they saw the death of Pablo Picasso on the cover. And his famous last words were, "Drink to me, drink to my health. You know I can't drink anymore." And on the spot, Paul wrote this song. And as he's writing this song in front of Dustin Hoffman, Dustin's talking to his wife saying, "Look at him. He's actually doing it. He's doing it right in front of us." So like he was freaked the F out and loved it. Dude, what a great freaking story, man. These are the kind of stories I can sink my teeth into. I love stuff like that, man. But again, doesn't that just go back to the brilliance of Paul McCartney? How you can take something that you wouldn't think would ever make it onto an album as anything and make it work as a song, dude.
Yeah, I think it's just a testament to his genius. But just to have the foresight to write the song and then decide, all right, this song goes on this album, and this is how I'm going to make it work, because it doesn't feel like it's out of place on this album at all. It fits the rest of the album. It actually follows the same pace that it was already going on. And you could make the case, just the song title and the theme of it, it kind of fits the rest of the tone of the album as well.
And we've got an R&B connection going back here for you, Phil, because he did what Biggie did years later. He referenced and sampled his own song on the same album, which is gutsy, but he puts Jet in the end of this song. And you're like, didn't I just hear this song earlier in the album? I mean, that's Paul saying, I'm Paul, I can do anything.
I mean, yeah, he samples Jet towards in there. It has the same refrain from Miss Vanderbilt, right?
Yep. Ho, hey ho.
Yeah, so yeah, I think that I would be surprised if he didn't intentionally put this in here as an overture.
I agree with that. The grand old painter died last night. His painting's on the wall. Before he went, he bade us well and said goodnight to us all. Drink to me, drink to my health. You know I can't drink anymore. Drink to me, drink to my health. You know I can't drink anymore. Dude, shut up. I mean, again, the guy can turn a phrase. That's why he's Paul. That's why he's Paul, and that's why he's great. Among the many reasons why he's great. Yeah.
Yeah. If you want to throw an interpretation with the rest of the theme of this album, of it, being freedom from something else that you were doing for a long time and doing something different. This song is kind of a, look back at what I was known best for, and, hey, celebrating what that was, but I don't do that anymore. I've moved on.
Interesting. See that, dude, when you start diving deep on something, that's good. That's a good take, man. I like that. I like that a lot. Again, I don't love this song. I hear it in my head right now. Personally, I'm not in love with it, but I get what it is, and I love that it came from nothing. And it's Paul, so I love Paul. So, we're taking this thing home, kids. This is the last track of the album, 1985. So yeah, this is it. Paul said with a lot of songs I do, the first line is it. It's all in the first line, and then you have to go on and write the second line. With Eleanor Rigby, I had picks up the rice in the church where the wedding has been. That was the one big line that started me off on it. With this one, it was no one ever left alive in 1985. That's all I had of that song for months. No one ever left alive in 1986. It wouldn't have worked. And that's in his own words, from the book in his own words. So, dude, what's your take on 1985?
Yeah, I definitely agree that the first line of this song is just so impactful. And there's so many Paul McCartney songs where the first line just hits you hard. And there's something about just, the piano at the beginning of this. It's just such a good record.
Yeah, I like this song, man. I'm a fan of this song. I think this is a great way to end this song. Um, if you could track this album yourself, would you have ended the album with this song? Do you think it's in the right spot?
I think that it is. I think that like it just fits kind of like this feels like kind of the closing credits if everything else
Mm.
like because Picasso's last word, like I said, it feels like the refrain at the end of the musical where, curtains are closing. And, this is the end. This is the credits rolling down.
And to your point, that's how a lot of other people look at this. Also, that's how it's been described. As this is the journey that Wings takes on the album. It describes the singer achieving artistic freedom through love. Um, yeah, full orchestra in the band. I mean, it's not a Paul McCartney jam if you don't have some horns and the full orchestra and the big production, which makes sense. So I'm okay with that as well.
He was definitely a fan of doing those big, huge sounds and like kind of like the wall of sound that like Phil Spector became popular for later. He was a fan of that style of production. He definitely liked his big, his big production values, and this song is a prime example of that. "Live and Let Die" is another one where it's just
Right.
like sounds on top of sounds, stacked on top of stacks,
The
stack,
wall of
stack, stack.
sound. Yeah. Some of the criticisms of this song is that the lyrics are just, gobbledygook. They kind of are. He's not saying much here. Um, does he need to say much here? I mean, is the song enough? Could the lyrics have been more involved? Is it just enough? What do you think?
I mean, listen. Some of my favorite Beatles songs are gibberish. Come on, Dig a Pony. What is Dig a Pony about?
That's very true.
And I love Dig a Pony, but I could not tell you what the lyrics of that song are about. And now I could tell you most of the lyrics of the song, but I don't know what it's about. It's a bunch of nonsense.
Same here. I love that song too, actually. You're right. There's, Rocky Raccoon. I mean, basically anything on the White Album is what we're trying to say here, folks. And we've done that one, by the way. Kids, sit in the archives. Go listen to it. It's very involved because I think during the recording of that episode, we missed like 2 songs, and I had to go back and piece all the audio together. I'm peeling back the curtain, kids, because I think the episode was like 6 hours or something. It was insanely long. So, you're right, dude. I mean, the simpler the better, right? And it's in reference to the Beatles album, the White Album. Paul defending the calling it the White Album and making it one album, and there was discussion of splitting into 2 records. He's like, "Are you kidding? With the Beatles, it's the White Album. It's great. Leave it alone. We're awesome," which was kind of his take on it. And um, the idea of when they were going to release "Hey Jude," George Martin tried to get him to cut it down, and they refused to cut it down. It's like, well, the radio's not going to play this. And John and Paul's comeback was, "Yeah, they will, because it's the Beatles. It's us. They'll play it." And so George's like, "Fine, whatever. We'll release the song." And the radio stations played it because they were right, because they knew what they were talking about. It's songs like that just pretty much solidifies me as being a fan of these guys till the very end of time. I mean, they're just that good. So,
Yeah, I
um,
mean, when you've got a good song, the radio will play it. Because
yes,
there were Ray Charles records that were long like that, and that did no, it ended up on the radio anyway because it was a great record.
absolutely. I agree. Yeah, for sure. Um, well, kids, there's your album. There's Band on the Run, and it didn't last forever. It's not a very long album. Um, it's again, I think it gets in and gets out and does what it needs to do. And again, depending on what version of this album you're listening to, the one with 21 tracks going to take you a while. But notice we didn't do that one. Um, but yeah, this is again, depending on whether or not you're a Beatles fan or a Paul fan, it's a hit, it's a classic, or maybe it's a miss for you. Who knows? It only runs for 44 minutes, 17 seconds, which is not a lifetime. And yeah, dude, I know I got your take on this when we started this episode here. Uh, I mean, I can't imagine Paul's catalog without this album, dude. I just can't imagine it. I mean, what if what about the idea? And I'll throw this at you. What about the idea of Paul McCartney and Wings? He never needed to name his backup band. It could have just been Paul. Here's Paul McCartney, kids, and that's it. But it's Paul McCartney and Wings, and it's the idea of I want this structure around me. How much of that do you think? Two-part question here. Did he need that structure because of the band environment of the Beatles? And if he did his name need to be out in front because he really wanted his name out in front? Is it a double whammy?
I mean, when you really think about the theme of this album and what it was that he was trying to do, I think that he needed Wings, and I think he needed to establish the band as something new. And I think the entire concept of this project is him going, look, I was in a pretty famous band, but I don't want to do that anymore. I want to do the songs I want to do. I want to have my own band. And so I think him going and doing that was, it's very brave for one thing, because people might have not liked it. Not everybody could just start another band after you spend decades in this pretty famous band. So yeah, I don't know if it would have hit the same if he just came out and put out, Band on the Run, Paul McCartney. I feel like a big part of the appeal of this is that it's a different band.
Hmm. Oh, yeah. You know what? I'll buy that. That makes sense to me. This album went 3 times platinum in the United States, kids. Over 3 million sales. So yeah, it did fairly good numbers. It went gold in the United Kingdom, platinum in the United Kingdom, gold in France, platinum in Canada. So yeah, it's a classic. I don't. Here's the funny part. I don't know if this is my favorite McCartney solo album. It's not that it's not. I don't know if it is for me. I'm going to hit you with one that you may or may not be a fan of. I thought Flaming Pie was a really good album. Was it his best? I don't know. You could argue that, but I think he has his moments of, wow, that's really good. And then there's other times when it's just, like I said, it's maple syrup, man. It's just covered in it. I mean, it's almost like he gets in his own way sometimes. Like he's too much Paul McCartney for a particular song. But isn't that the curse of a genius also? Like he doesn't take his foot off the gas on what he's good at, right?
He's made a lot of music.
True.
And I mean, there are albums that I like. Like I like McCartney too.
I do too.
I like Flaming Pie as well. I just think with Band on a Run, I think that Band on a Run was his first like undeniable success after he left the Beatles.
Hmm. Yeah,
And I
and
mean,
that counts.
I think some people might say Ram is his first real success, but I don't think it was. I don't think Ram was what Band on a Run was.
The critics love Ram. They continue to love Ram, and I think the fans love Band on the Run.
Yeah,
you know,
and I like Ram as well, but I don't think
yeah.
Ram is as good as Band on a Run. That's just my opinion.
I listened to Ram earlier today in its entirety. Yeah, I think I'm with you. I do think Bound the Run is more commercially appealing than Ram. Ram feels like I'm going to get at that John. Watch this.
Yeah, I just think there's something to Band on the Run is very concise. It has a very, very clear pace throughout the album.
Yeah.
Like it has a clear direction. Like it has a clear story that he's trying to tell throughout the album. And once he's done with it, he's done. It doesn't overstay its welcome. And it doesn't have a lot of filler that I find in a lot of other Paul McCartney albums.
Filler, that's a death knell right there, is what you just said, is filler for sure. And it's funny because filler is never a good word, ever. Filler's always like, oh, it's got a filler. This match is all filler. This album, this movie, it's all filler. Yeah, it's never a good word. Yeah, so that's it, folks. That's Bound the Run. We've mentioned Ram. Maybe we'll cover Ram one day. Maybe we'll cover McCartney 2 or McCartney 1. Maybe we'll do a double whammy and do both in the same episode. Who knows? But that's your Solo Beatles Project episode for today. So Phil, before we take this thing home, give me your last word on Band on the Run.
I would easily say that Band on Run is not just one of my favorite Paul McCartney albums, probably one of my favorite all-time albums. I think that, it's just one of those works that, when you look at Paul McCartney, it has just some of his most noteworthy songs on it. It's probably some of the songs that he's known the best for outside of the Beatles.
Yeah, I agree. I can't disagree with any of that. I think I think this is the master at work. And I don't know if I'm putting it on the same level as his absolute best with the Beatles. I don't know if I'm saying that personally. This is the master at work. This is a guy who can do this stuff blindfolded, with no help, and just freaking nail it and kill it, which is, I think, what he did on this album. So I'm a fan of this album. It's definitely a classic. It's going to be with us forever, which I'm very happy about that. So add it to your collection, folks. It should be on everyone's playlist starting today. Go make it happen. And that's how it is. That's the endorsement here from the 6M podcast. And that is Band on the Run. Hey, thanks for listening to the show. Check out our social media on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at 6M Podcast. We'll see you next time.